The futurist Anders Sörman-Nilsson thinks we need to refocus the way that we educate. He joins us now. Thanks so much for being here. We do hear a lot as parents about the importance of making sure that our kids are trained in STEM. You've got to make sure that they go into science and tech. You know, all of these old-fashioned industries are going to get replaced by artificial intelligence and by robots. But there is also a concern that algorithms will learn to write other algorithms and code will know how to write other code. So is it necessarily that secure to tell your kids to become coders?
Well, I don't think it's a very long-term view to just be touting the benefits of STEM today. Because essentially, as you pointed out, we are really teaching kids to do jobs that robots are going to be superior at. I think there's a huge danger. I mean, according to the World Economic Forum, 65% of kids that are entering primary school today will end up in jobs that we haven't even invented yet. And this is a huge risk, but also a huge opportunity to focus on which parts of the brain and what kind of cognitive skills we want to develop in our kids. And I think more of those are going to be on the right side of the brain: creativity, emotional intelligence, innovation, and really being agile to solve problems in creative fashions.
Does it have to be one or the other? Can the education system just be sort of an all-round balance of the two? Because some kids, would you say some kids are more wired one way than the other?
Absolutely. So, I mean, and there are even, psychometric tools like the Herman Brain Dominance Instrument, blue chip tools that actually test your cognitive skills and whether they're more left brain or more right brain. And in fact, in some ways, you'd argue that whole brain kids are the ones that are most flexible for the future, who have an equal kind of opportunity to be, Renaissance men and women, polymaths that have a mastery both of logic and sequence and mathematics, but also the creativity, which is why I think that, doing double degrees, for example, is such a key when it comes to university education as well.
What are the kinds of, and by the way, we should clarify, when we talk about careers being overtaken by robots or artificial intelligence, I think a certain proportion of people will just roll their eyes and go, oh, come on, there aren't going to be humanoid robots walking down the street replacing us. We're not going to tune into News Breakfast and see a couple of robots sitting here instead of us. That's not the point, is it? So just clarify for people who are sort of tech skeptics about what we're actually talking about when we talk about jobs being replaced by artificial intelligence.
Well, in many ways, what artificial intelligence is going to do to white-collar work is what robots and machines and tractors have been doing to blue-collar work. So equally as our brawns have been automated and mechanized, so will our left brains and our brains as well. So this is very, very important, right? Because as we see and as we look towards the future, in terms of kids educating themselves for the future, what is absolutely true is that certain tasks, not necessarily whole-scale jobs, will be lost, but certain tasks in our day, like data entry, for example. Well, Siri can do that better than us actually punching spreadsheets, for example. And according to our research just recently, 48% of Australians think that robots are going to take over the world in terms of most jobs by the year 2040. And this is kind of threatening. And also for the tech skeptics out there, they're certainly being sort of future phobes when it comes to the future. But I think humans have to look at what we're fundamentally good at as humans, right? If you told artificial intelligence to kind of tune in to the emotional state of your co-workers, or give a really fantastic speech about the future of the strategy for the organization, to win hearts and minds, artificial intelligence is not that good at that, but humans can still do that kind of work.
So is that the sort of emotional intelligence education that you'd like to see more of in schools?
Yeah, I think both EQ but also CQ for creative quotient as well, I think is absolutely essential. I mean, it was only a few years ago that left-handed people in school were told to put their left hand behind their arm and write with the right side of their body, for example. Kids were taught not to draw outside the lines or outside the box, but now the sort of creative imperative is to be able to think outside the box when we get into the workplace.
Yeah. It is one of those things where, as you start thinking about the number of careers that exist that could be replicated by an artificial system, it becomes a little bit worrying. We know how much money companies like Google are putting into self-driving cars, for example, and that a significant proportion of the economy is people driving trucks and driving cabs and driving Ubers. Well, all of that could potentially go. And then I was reading the other day that there are entire fields like, for example, radiology, where the ability to look at an X-ray of a lung and determine whether or not something is aberrant there is becoming better done actually by an algorithm than it is by the human eye. So the question of like what you go into, all you can be sure of, I suppose, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that a human being is always going to prefer to engage with a human being than they are with a computer. So any job where some kind of human empathy is required, like nursing or palliative care or anything like that, or as you say, creativity, is going to be a superior job to go into than something that where a task is done by rote.
And I think we have to be mindful of that. I mean, at Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York, for example, more doctors and nurses started trusting the artificial intelligence of IBM's Watson's healthcare AI when it came to oncological diagnosis, right? At the same time, they found that some of the inputs of that data were actually just simulations and not based on real human data. And as a result now, they've gone back to bridging the gap between the human intelligence and the artificial intelligence. So there's been a kind of a tech lash at Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital now, where they're starting to engage with human doctors again, but then also backed up with the artificial data as well.
It's a fascinating discussion. Anders, thanks so much for coming in this morning.
Thank you.